Besides violins and cellos and violoncello da spallas, obviously, my musical interests kind of lie. I've spent many years passionately obsessed with a lot of world music. So I also play an instrument called the kora from West Africa. I've dabbled with other kind of instruments on the way, but that was a big passion for me. I also travelled to Gambia for a while and spent some week playing with what is essentially a griot cast, which is the hereditary royal musicians cast, which was an incredible experience just playing with them and learning from them, players from birth. So it's always inspiring to learn their stories and the way they think about music and how they learn music. But throughout that led me to many other styles as well. So even things like Venezuelan llanero music, absolutely fantastic, sort of classical harps, but in a completely different style. Where it's very rhythmic, in fact, they do tap dance with it as well in a kind of competitive cowboy environment. So there's some amazing stuff, and there's an endless amount of bands around the world I could talk to you about. But what's really interesting for me around those things is that a lot of world music, when it came back into Europe, is where some of the formations of Baroque music were. When we go into tuning, how you think about tuning, how you think about frequencies, how you think about string developments, how you think about sound structures. So that's always actually really crossed over for me as well. Even when you start talking into violin, violin is one of the most versatile, I would say the most versatile instrument that doesn't change across the world. So I think what people aren't aware of generally, there's classical styles where you have the general European classical styles, but then you go into like kind of Czech Hungarian, what would be classical styles. You've got a gypsy kind of, or Romanian kind of, they're still roughly in the classical styles, sometimes moving over to jazz. But when you're talking fiddle styles, most of it's thought of as mainly, Great Britain, so the Irish, Scottish. But these influences go across the world. There's a Mexican fiddle style, Canadian fiddle style. Klezmer is essentially a Jewish fiddle style. But even, let's say, in klezmer, there's classical parts and fiddle parts of those areas. And they all have different characteristics, different sounds, different ways they think about sounds, different ways they think about creating techniques that actually all completely apply to classical music and Baroque music. And in fact, it all came from it and developed from it and was influenced. So in a way, although world music can feel very different, and I've always hated the term because every country is completely different, but it really does feed into a really kind of enveloping knowledge, I find, in sound production and music in general and music theory, which is why it's such a passionate area for me, on top of just absolutely loving the music and loving rhythmic music especially. It's sort of great. There's a lot of great music to explore. I'm always happy to point you in directions if that's something you're interested in as well, or maybe even something you haven't explored. Get in touch if you'd like to know more. Obviously, if you know any great music, so I'm always happy to share. I can talk about this area for a very long time, as you can imagine, and I'm always happy to. So I'm Paul Shelley, and I hope you found that useful, and I'll speak to you next time.